What's up, everyone, and welcome to Metalcore Nerds. This is Sean Mott, your host. This week's episode, we have Johnny Crowder from Prison in Cope Notes. At the beginning of the podcast, he helped me how to structure interviews and everything like that. So he is actually very integral into how this podcast got formed. And finally, we got to have a conversation about his career through music. Also, if you missed out this week, I did a live stream with Dan DeFonce on his Talks Metal podcast. It should be up on YouTube now, or I think you can probably still watch it on his Twitch channel. It's twitch.tv/DanFonce. Or if you look up DeFonce Talks Metal on YouTube, you should be able to find it. And I'm also on Joel Hastings' podcast again, talking about The Boys, which is one of my favorite TV shows right now. I'm also in the middle of reading the comics. I couldn't recommend that show enough, especially if you're not like a comic fan. It's the perfect show to do something comic if you're not exactly into that kind of stuff. And if you are into comic stuff, then it's definitely a show for you to watch. But definitely check those two things out. And we're going to get right in this conversation. Johnny Crowder. Hey Johnny, what's up, man? How's it going?
I am actually pretty pumped because rumor has it that it's going to dip below 90 degrees in Florida pretty soon.
Wow.
So stocking up on winter coats and stuff.
I mean, you can come to New York. It's already 60, so.
Oh, it sounds amazing.
I kind of hate it, but
yeah,
it's all
grass
right.
is greener.
Yeah, it's in the morning, it's like 40, so that's kind of whatever. But as soon as it gets to like afternoon, it gets to like 60, and you're like, okay, this is fine. This is fine.
I remember Christmas, maybe, I don't remember if it was last year or the year before because time doesn't exist anymore. But
No,
I remember one Christmas, I was wearing a t-shirt and jeans in Florida. And I remember thinking, wow, I shouldn't have worn jeans today. December 25th. And I was soaking sweat. I can't remember what year it was, but I remember being like, wow, this is only a Florida thing, it feels.
Yeah, for sure. Because usually Sam, my wife, and I, we go to Disney and Universal. Usually we go like in October, and then we'll go around our birthday, which is end of January, February. But our birthdays are like within a week of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And usually when we go in, January, February, it's full on winter here, like straight up, foot of snow. And then we go down there and we're like in a t-shirt and shorts, and like, this is sick.
Heck yeah.
It's good, but I can understand being in the hot so much, and especially how hot it gets there, that wanting some cold would make sense. It's all situational.
I think it's more fun to live in a hot place when you can go do things like go to the beach or go to like a water park or something. But since everything is closed, I just don't even want to dip my toe outside.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it gets pretty humid in New York, but it's still not as hot, like where it could be like 100 and then humid, so it feels like it's like 120 or some shit like that. And it's here, it's like 90, but still super humid. So it like just scratches the surface of where you guys are anyway. So I completely understand. Like I have friends who live in Texas, and it's always ungodly hot there, and so I can understand for sure. Wanting a little bit of some chilliness to your life. So I wanted to say, because we were talking about this a little before we hit record, that for anyone listening, Johnny helped me out super when I first posted, like, hey, would anybody be interested if I did a podcast? You reached out to me and helped me out with laying out how to structure like episodes and what to send to guests and everything. And I just wanted to give you credit for that. Usually when anyone asks, I'm like, oh yeah, Johnny from Cope Notes, actually, he sent me his layout, and he's like, yeah, just use whatever you want, change whatever you want, all good. And that's been the biggest help for me from the start to make everything smooth and as professional as possible. So again, thank you for that. I thanked you a million times when you first did it. It was so cool for you even to reach out to me and say it, but thank you. And I'm glad we're finally doing an episode together. I know it's been we've been talking about it since I've started now. So it's good to make it finally happen.
No, I'm so happy that it's actually being put to good use and that it helped, because when I started, I was like, what do I freaking do? Because I've been on so many interviews where people just kind of say, what's the deal with Cope Notes? And
And
I'm
that's
like,
it.
wow, you probably didn't write anything, did you? And I actually did an interview on tour. This is when we made the mistake of hiring a press person to handle
Oh.
our release. This is Dark Sermon days a while ago. And I remember that we were paying this guy like $1,200 a month or something. And we did this interview, I think it was in New York. And the guy said, it's so weird. I looked you guys up and couldn't find anything on Google and Spotify and Instagram. Couldn't find you anywhere. And I was like, really? That's terrible. How we need to talk to somebody at our label about it. And he goes, yeah, I typed in Black Sermon and pretty much all it was all these preachers. And I was like,
Oh my
you literally don't know the name
God.
of this band. And we fired our PR guy after that.
Yeah,
So
because
yeah, I'm
usually
a fan
the
of more
PR guy
structure.
would prep the person like, oh hey, here's some links, something, like
You would hope that.
because I've even done a few episodes where it's just talking about like pop culture news, and in that, if there's like a trailer or something, I linked the trailer in it, and it's not like this is like some crazy professional news podcast, But even that, I'm like, hey, if you haven't seen it, I mean, obviously you can easily Google and put it in YouTube and you'll find it, but here it is, so you can just click it right there, and instead of making someone search for something, that's insane.
Yeah, I
The
remember,
wrong
and it
band
was on
name.
camera too when he said that.
So you guys were all
I was
like,
yeah, my face just kind of melted, and I was like, "Oh, you literally don't know what my band is called, and you scheduled this interview with someone that we're paying money."
that's unreal. That's
Yeah.
terrible. Oh my God. Because you think when you do interviews of any kind, you got to research at least a little bit.
I have way too many bad interview stories to share. The last thing I'll say is that Prison's first record is called NGRI. It's an acronym. And I did an interview with this guy who said, "Now tell me about Angry." And I didn't know what he was talking about. And he said, "Your album, Angry." And I said, we only have, at the time, we only had one record out. And I was like, we only have one record. That might be by another band. And it took us a while to realize that he was talking about NGRI. And I was like, no freaking way.
And you just thought it was Angry or something. Yeah, wow.
Yeah. That was a journey too.
It's so weird how people read if it's an acronym or a different word and then say something else. I was talking about this with someone else, and so many people, because I used to work a 9 to 5 design job for years, like almost a decade, until I started working for myself. But people would always email me back and call me Scott all the time. And it's like my name's
they'd like mash your
they would mash
together.
my first name and last name, but it's usually it would be like Sean at something, and then my name would be in the signature and everything. And I'm like, how do you just like combine that? Like, how does that happen?
Heck yes.
I mean, obviously I've gotten the Sean spelt different ways, which is like, how do you know? There's like 3 spellings of Sean.
Right.
Someone just says Sean, you're not going to know.
But if it's in your email address.
Yeah, that, and it's like, hey, Scott. And I'm like, who's Scott? Like,
I'll forward this to Scott.
Yeah, I was like, I'll let Scott know. It was funny because the last like full-time job I had, the owner of the company, his name was Scott.
Oh no.
So if I was like, I could forward it to Scott, I actually could have. So that would have been pretty funny. Just like, yeah, Scott, what's up? So I want to know, obviously the pandemic has affected everyone and anyone. We've all been home for months at this point, almost 6 months or so. So what have you been doing? Like, have you had any extra time to like read some stuff you wanted to read, or watch some movies or TV shows you wanted to watch, or maybe play some video games you never had time for? That's been my new thing, rather than asking how it's affected everyone, because at this point we all know it's affected everyone. So I've been interested if there's anything you got to do, or even if it's like a new hobby or something, like if there's anything new you got to get into with the extra time most of us have now.
Yeah, I think this year, one of the biggest fruits of not being able to do anything that I wanted to do was that I got to revisit one of my very first passions of my whole life, which is cars. I loved cars growing up so much. I was the kid with the Lamborghini poster in his room and would like always geek out about like car magazines. And then as I started getting more into music, and that started taking up a larger and larger chunk of my time, I kind of grew away from cars and I spent all my time in a van and just kind of lost my love for it. And then this year, I realized like, wow, well, I can't go play basketball and I can't go to the gym and I can't go rehearse and I can't track music and I can't like realizing that I couldn't do all the things that I really wanted to do. I couldn't even go to church. And then I was like, what am I going to do with the time that I would normally do those things? And I tried not to work. That was my main rule. Like I can't
Mm,
work during those hours because I will lose my mind. So I started turning to cars and getting back into reading car reviews and watching car reviews and learning about all these new
oh,
cars. And I had tuned out of the car world for like 15 years or more. So I've missed a lot of stuff. So now I'm
right.
catching up on all of these beautiful supercars that have been invented over the last couple decades that I just totally didn't hear about. So it's a lot of fun. I actually, my sister got me for my birthday uh, one of the new Lamborghini
Oh,
Sian, I
wow.
think it's called, Sian. And I love this model so much. It literally, I have this same car, a different spec on my desktop background. And it's cool to allow myself to geek out about something that isn't related to like saving the world. It's just like
Right.
something that I enjoy just because I enjoy it, you
Like
know?
an actual hobby rather
Hmm.
than something
Yeah. And I've
that's
been going to car
in your work.
meets and stuff because they,
Oh,
a lot of them are outside, so
yep.
it's easy to stay a fair distance from people and you're just walking around looking at people's cars. And
Cars.
it's been like my saving grace in terms of social interaction because I can't go to all the places I want to go, but I can go to car shows. And
Yeah,
that's been a dream for me to just have somewhere to be, to look at this beautiful functional art without being in danger.
true. Have you been going to the gym now? Because gyms have been open for you for a while now, right?
So I started going back to the gym after I got COVID because now I have antibodies. But I did before that. I was working out at my house, and
Yeah.
I was running out of ideas. So I would literally carry. Um, I would find something really heavy, like my recycling bin or something, and just carry it for miles, like over my head, out in front of me, and just walk for a couple hours. And I kept just trying to come up with different ways to use my body. But now that I've
Yeah.
already had COVID, I am so relieved that I can go back to the gym.
Yeah, that's fair. I've New York's been very careful with everything, which I appreciate a lot. And they just like a month or two ago started having gyms open. So I went a few times, but I've gotten so accustomed to doing stuff not at the gym that it was just weird for me
Yeah.
because I've been doing like all these like non-weight like body motion like hit
Hmm.
exercises, or I've been riding my bike a lot. But now that it's getting colder, it's I won't be able to ride my bike for much longer, maybe a month or
Yeah.
two before it's just too cold to ride outside. And so I know I'll probably end up going to the gym a bit more, but it's been a little weird because it's I almost felt like the new routine I started was better, like produced better results for me for some reason. But I think it was also because I started doing it like every day. I would do some form of exercise every day. So obviously that helped rather than going to the gym like 3 or 4 times a week, which is still good. But it's when you're watching a video following along, it keeps you on track more than, you at the gym just trying to, figure out what the fuck to do next. And it is a little weirder now too, because it's like you don't want to go to a spot where it's a ton of people, if it's like
Yeah.
too congregated. So you kind of want to like pick and choose where you go. You're like, I wanted to do that, but I guess not. Guess I'll go over here. But I'm sure I'll find some way to make it work once it gets too cold for me to do anything
Yeah. I
outside.
started training when I was like 13 or 12, like
Oh
much younger
wow!
than you probably should. And what I've noticed over, it's probably that's 15 or 16 years of
Right,
training. And one thing that I've noticed is the moment you switch something up, you break free from whatever plateau you didn't realize you were hitting. So when
right.
I was doing strength, I was lifting stupid heavy earlier this year. And then uh, the pandemic hits, and then I'm bike riding and doing a bunch of cardio and doing body weight and stuff. And then I
Mhm.
start getting really toned. And I was like, what? I was lifting way heavier than this before. And
Yeah.
I was kind of hitting a wall. And
Yep.
then, so after that, after like 6 months or so of that, then I get COVID. Now I'm back in the gym. And in the first couple months back in the gym, I'm seeing more progress than in the last 4 months of the previous thing. And what I'm learning is, as long as you switch something up every, like, I'd say probably every 4 months, every 4 to 6 months, like completely switch up your training style, and it just keeps your body guessing.
I'll have to ask you for some gym pointers. I'm not like a big lift guy, but it would be nice to. I'll ask you off recording some pointers on that stuff because I really don't know much about stuff. I've just done stuff that's worked, you know. But
Mm-hmm.
that would be nice to have if you would be down to give me some pointers
Heck
there.
yeah.
Sick,
Heck yeah.
awesome. Are you? Random question: are you a big movie guy? Do you like going to the movies or no?
There's actually a joke in prison, a running joke that we pull out every single time we're interviewed as a band
Mm-hmm.
together. And the joke is that I've never seen a movie before. And we will like casually mention it. I hope that someone is listening to this and winds up watching one of those interviews where someone in my band will casually accuse me of not having seen a movie before, but loud enough to where the interviewer can hear. And
Yeah.
then they'll ask like, oh no, let's talk more about that. I'm like, no, I don't want to make it a whole thing. And then we wind up doing this inside joke where I say that I've seen parts of movies and I know movie quotes, but I've just never seen a whole
A
movie
full
front to
movie.
back in 30 years of being alive, 28. And so if this was a normal interview, I'd say, you know what? I've never seen a movie before. But because I know you slightly tangentially, I will
Yeah.
say that I the joke came from me really not having seen very many movies. Mostly, if I have time to myself, I'm listening to music or doing something that is not on a screen. But I do watch a lot of like documentaries and YouTube
Oh, okay,
type
okay, okay. Yeah.
stuff. So I really like learning. However, I love fiction, and I've seen a couple movies this year that I really enjoyed, and I'm kind of allowing myself to appreciate fiction now. And
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
something that COVID has allowed, because before I'd never sit in one place long enough to even watch like 30 minutes of a movie.
Oh, wow. That's wild. I was just mentioning that because I'm an avid moviegoer. Obviously, I have like a mostly pop culture podcast, but then I have episodes where it's like this, where it's really just getting to know you and your whole journey in music and stuff like that. But so I obviously go to the movies a lot, and New York is not opening up movies, but they just announced that like one of the biggest theater chains in the States is closing down, and it's not really a
Oh,
definite that it's coming back because all of the major movies obviously have been pushed to next year. So there's really no point of a movie theater being open.
yeah.
And the two biggest states, New York and California, for movies, there I know some spots in California are open, but LA isn't. Which so like obviously
Hmm.
LA and New York City are the two biggest hubs for movies, especially moviegoers and everything. So if there's no big movies coming out, it's like what's the point of a theater opening up to show old movies or whatever at a limited capacity? It's just small markets like the town I live or the city I live in. It doesn't make any sense. Like they're just going to be. It's like a lot of venues opening up. If they're a small venue and they open up a limited capacity, it's like, is that really going to save them? Like,
Yeah.
probably not. Some venues I do completely understand them trying to find something, do like a movie night, or like a social distance movie night, or doing a local show where the draw isn't that big anyway, and they can make it work
Hmm.
safely and stuff. I'm all for that. That's you. I hate seeing every day a new venue close and shit like that. It's so
Yeah.
disheartening. It's terrible. But that's why I want. That's interesting. It's very interesting to see someone who really hasn't been a movie guy, but it's everyone has their own thing, so it makes sense.
I really wanted to be an actor growing up,
Oh
but it's
wow,
funny because I hadn't seen very many movies.
you just wanted to be the guy who like lost themselves in something, and you know.
Well, yeah, I think I eventually found an outlet for that through improv. Like I wanted
Oh
to be an
yeah,
actor, and then when I started doing comedy, I was like, "Oh, this is where I wanted to be."
okay, yeah, that makes sense. Awesome. So switching to music, what is the show or the band that you saw and you're like, I want to do that? I love this question because it's always so different for everyone.
You know, if I'm being 100% honest, so I've wanted to be a rock star like pretty much my whole life.
Uh,
And the first concert I ever went to, I had an image in my head of what a concert was. And then the first real concert that I went to was Aaron Carter.
oh wow. Okay.
And I must have been 8, maybe, or 7.
Mhm.
I think I was 7 actually. And he was on Radio Disney, and that was like,
Yeah.
you're 7, it's Radio Disney. Like,
Yeah.
you're rocking out. And I remember being like, you know what? This is embarrassing. I'll tell you this. After this concert, I heard something about Aaron Carter um, living in Florida. So I called every single Aaron Carter in the phone book and
Oh
left
my God.
voicemails asking if he would come play basketball with me. And I'm sure those people get those calls all the time. But
I'm
I didn't
sure.
even know as a 7-year-old that like children are not listed in the phone book,
Right, right. Like,
you
why would you
know?
know that? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was kind of my first foray into like, wow, I like live music.
Okay.
And then I think when I started hearing um, rock, like heavier rock, like 3 Days Grace and Breaking Benjamin, and then eventually System of a Down and Linkin Park, that did a lot for me. But I
Right.
think what really like made me realize that I like heavy music and I wanted to pursue that path was Slipknot's Volume 3. My
Okay.
friend's dad had it, and my friend took it from his dad and he wasn't allowed to. And then he let me listen to it on the bus with him, and I was like, the rest of my life will be based on doing this.
That's awesome. That's a great record. It's funny you mentioned that. Sam is a manager at Hot Topic, and they got in Subliminal Versus 2005 tour T-shirts.
Mm.
So obviously, we
I
both
need to
own that
find
shirt
that.
now. I would check. You can't. It's so weird because some of those shirts you can just buy online, but for
Mm.
some reason those aren't available online. So I think they only went to stores. So
Dang.
wild. She
Yeah, I
also
got to
got
keep an eye out for him.
there was like a One Step Closer Linkin Park shirt that they put out recently too.
Heck yes.
And
I
I
watched
was
that
like,
music
yeah,
video last night.
really?
Like, that's the kind of person I am. I still live back then.
Oh, dude, I do too. So many people are like, yeah, what are you listening to? And I'll list like a band that's around now. And I'm like, but mostly I listen to like Armor for Sleep and 18 Visions.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But then 18 Visions released a new EP last week, so I can say I listened to that.
Oh dang. You're finally topical again. You're finally culturally relevant.
It's so weird because when you get ingrained in like the music scene, especially in the music industry part of it, it almost like, and there's so many bands now, and obviously you can't really reinvent the wheel anymore. I mean, some
Yeah.
bands have done a good job at doing something completely different and everything, but it's so hard. And a lot of bands don't view records as records anymore. It's just like a bunch of songs that they put together and put out on a label.
Yeah.
So to win me over, it's got to be like a sick record. I mean, I'm sure, bands put out singles and stuff. I'm like, oh, that's a really cool song. But the
Mhm.
bands that really bring me in are bands that put out really good records. Besides
Yeah.
that Static Dress band, but they're just like teasing, just putting out singles. They put out like 4 songs, and they're legitimately one of my favorite bands. But they sound like they came from 2005. And that's
Who are they?
why Static Dress.
I've never heard of them. I gotta
They're
check them out.
from Europe. I think they're from the UK, but they're like a screamo band. They're like an early 2000s screamo band.
Mhm.
They're fucking incredible. Like if I showed you this video and told you it came from 2005, you'd probably believe me. That's
Heck
like
yeah.
they
That's
look
awesome.
like from that time, except they're really smart because it's like all their videos they're so, everything is so well done. But I know they have like a super big backing behind them already. I think Paradigm books them in the US, and they have like a crazy big manager. Like they're going to be massive. They're going to be
Mhm.
huge. But they've only put out 4 songs, and they put them out as singles. They haven't even released like an actual release. And
Dang.
I don't know if they're going to.
I wanted that to happen with Prison so bad. Like Dark Sermon had to tour for a couple years and earn
Yeah,
like really grind. And I mean, like I'm talking, you play 100 shows and you
yeah,
get paid dirt, and then someone's like, well, you got to earn your stripes, and it's like, what have we been doing? So
I
Dark
know.
Sermon had like such a difficult path to finally get signed, and then once we got signed, we realized that doesn't change anything. You still
Yeah,
have to quote earn it. And then with Prison, I was like, okay, hopefully we can just come out the gate with a lot of backing, with a lot of people behind us. They'll hopefully believe in me and everyone else in the band because we've been in signed bands
bands
before.
before. Yeah,
And I was hoping to do what you're saying that band is doing, like release a couple singles, but they already have all that backing and they have so much momentum. They're like set up for success. And Prison had a lot of talks like that with a lot of people in the industry where they
right.
believed in us and they believed that we could be that, and then nobody followed through, and then we had to do it the hard way again. So
Yeah,
maybe, I don't know, if I ever have a third band, maybe that band will be the one that starts out with that backing.
yeah, and it's weird how that happened. It's very circumstantial and very kind of, I think, a thing of the right time, right place kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Of how that stuff happens, because that doesn't happen very often. You know what I mean? It's very strange that a band comes out and they're immediately big. Like if you even talk about like Knock Loose grinded for like 3 or 4 years before they became Knock
Mm-hmm.
Loose. I
Yeah.
Ghost Ship played with them when they were drawing, like 50 people. We played with them in a fucking garage in Indianapolis, like in
Yeah.
2010. Like Isaac still had long hair, and it was like when pop culture just came out, and like people talked about them, but
Mm-hmm.
they were nothing compared to what they are now. And
Yeah.
people are like, oh, they blew up overnight. It's like, no, they didn't. They toured nonstop for like 3 years until they got a real tour. Like
Yeah.
it's crazy how people view things that way too. But again, it's different for people like us who are, it's almost like our everyday life. Like we're involved in everything in some way, shape, or form. So it's like we see all this stuff happen. We go to
Yeah.
the shows where we see them, when they drew no one to when they draw people and everything like that. So from like a normal casual person who just like goes to shows and doesn't pay attention to this stuff every day, I can see how they can be like, oh, this band came out of nowhere. Because to them, they probably did, but to us, we're like, no, we've known about them for years. Like, but
Yeah.
that's how it is, though.
I think about, like, so with Dark Sermon, we started playing shows when I was just turned 16. Like I just got my driver's license, and I was in Dark Sermon for 8 years. Prison actually started in 2014. A lot of people don't know
Really?
that. So I've been doing music for 12-ish years, give or take. And there are still times when we'll talk to an agent or we'll talk to a manager, and they're like, you just got to earn your stripes, man. You just put in the work. And I'm like, over a decade? Holy crap. How long does this take? And I can only think of, I don't know how many shows I've played at this point. I have a tour laminate thing that has probably 20 something laminates on it, and I'm
Right.
missing them. Like I've
Yeah.
been touring for a long time, and I still hear agents and managers be like, well, you just got to put your time in, man. It's just, and then all I think is, wow, if one day we blow up, someone out there is going to say, yeah, Prison blew up out of nowhere. And
Right.
it's like, yeah, out of nowhere after 12 years. Like, you're right. The perspective is like when I saw King 810, like just completely explode. I was
Yeah.
like, well, excuse me, Mr. My first tour is Mayhem and my second tour is a world tour with Slipknot and Korn. And I got salty because I was frustrated that I had been doing music for so long and I
Yeah.
couldn't catch a break. And then here along comes someone who gets lucky, and probably 99% of the time, way more legwork happened before that blow up that you just weren't aware of.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That's completely right. You started talking about Dark Sermon. Were you in bands before Dark Sermon, or was that like your first band?
So I was Dark Sermon used to be called, ready for the worst band name in the world, it used to be called In Reference to a Sinking Ship. And
That's
a
pretty good.
member of the band named the band that after a Norma Jean song. And then that member quit like immediately. And then
Oh,
I
there you go.
joined before they had even played a show. And then I was like, we got to change the band name. And unfortunately, it took like 2.5 years for us to finally change the band name. But it's funny
Oh
because labels
wow.
were showing us attention as in reference. And then once we changed our band name, we got signed almost immediately. And it's like, wow,
Wow.
if someone would have
Yeah.
just told us that the issue was that we had the worst, longest, most MySpace scene core
Band name.
band name in the world, we would have changed it way earlier. So it was definitely, I don't view it as being in a different band, even though stylistically it was very different. It was with
Yeah,
the same
it's
people.
same. Yeah.
So I feel that I've been in two bands, Dark Sermon and Prison.
Okay, cool. That's kind of rare too to see someone who's been in only two bands, but both bands have like done the thing, like toured and done pretty successful tours at that. Because even like I had Tuck from Fit for a King on here, and even
Mhm.
he was in like a few bands before he got into Fit for a King. Because obviously Fit for a King was kind of later in his career, but he was in like a, a number of bands before that even happened. He was in a
Yeah.
band that I think he didn't get along with. I can't remember who he said it was, like the singer or the guitar player, and then he quit, and I think they got signed to Media Scare after. But something fucky happened with Media Scare, and I don't even think the album even really came out. It was something like it didn't even matter if they got signed to Media Scare. It was kind of like
Yeah.
a formality more than anything. But that's super cool that you've only been in two bands.
I feel very fortunate, but I will say it wasn't for lack of trying, because I tried to start a bunch of bands. I tried to join a bunch of bands, and
Right.
it was like doors kept getting slammed in my
Mm.
face. Like something wouldn't work out, or someone would require me to move somewhere, or
Yeah. Yeah.
it, or in a lot of cases as a vocalist, people will ask you to sing about or say things that you don't really believe in. So
Oh
that was
yeah.
an issue for me. Like I had, I won't name the band, but I had a really big band, much bigger than Prison or Dark Sermon, much, 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 um, invite me to be their vocalist after their vocalist left. And it was
Yeah.
like a band I've been listening to for a decade. And it was like the opportunity of a lifetime, basically. Like I would get paid, I would be in front of,
Right.
hundreds, in some cases thousands of people every night, like huge, huge opportunity. And they wanted me to sing the lyrics, and the lyrics were very negative, um, very anti-faith, which kind of clashes with me, and also very hopeless. There were some like pro self-harm kind of
Oh.
terms in what they sang, and I was like, well, maybe I'll get to write some of the new stuff. And they're like, no, we're gonna write the new lyrics. And I'm just like, holy crap, this wasn't the sole reason why I said no, but it was a huge determining factor. So I tried to be a part of other bands and get involved
Mhm.
in other parts of the music scene. And I think so many things kind of played defense and blocked me out, that Prison and Dark Sermon were the only two things that actually caught traction.
Right.
And no one else even let me in the door fully.
Yeah, and it's so hard being. It's like one difference. It's like a difference being like, oh, you're a hired gun and you just kind of show up and play, and it's like kind of like, oh, this is literally a job. Like I'm hired to be a touring guitar player or whatever. But
Yeah.
be like, hey, you're going to be the vocalist, but we're going to write all the lyrics, and you have no say in it. That's tough, especially because anyone who's been in a band, you probably understand. It's like it's a form of art, and to
Hmm.
be in a band and not be able to put anything into it, that would, like, I couldn't even imagine that. Like what's the point of being in a band and being creative if you're just like the guy? I mean, I guess there are some bands like that where it's like, oh, the bass player just plays bass and maybe he spruces up the bass part or something like that. But
Hmm.
I'm sure like any band I've been in, everyone's had like creative input. It's like, oh, hey, what if I do this in this part, or what if we switch up this part? And that's part of the fun of being in a band and writing music, is collaborating with different people and making songs together rather than one person coming and be like, hey, here's the song, play it. you know
Yeah. Like right now with Prison, I write um a ton of the music. I split all the music writing 50-50 with Cooper, my guitarist.
Oh, okay.
And in Dark Sermon, I didn't really have that level of autonomy. It was kind of like everyone kind of stayed in their own lane. Like the drum guy writes the drums, the
Okay.
guitar guy writes the guitars, and they were like, you write the vocals, but in prison I can sit with Cooper and like kind of mime out a drum fill. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
no, it's do do ka ka do ka do do ka, and then I'll try to map it with him. I don't play drums, but
Right.
I'm able to like try to play a riff and then hand him the guitar, and then he
Mhm.
actually does it 50
Yep.
times better. And being able to even, I design all of our merch. I have designed all of our album artwork and stuff like that. And it's cool to have actual creative input. And I like the idea of filling in for that bigger band that I mentioned for a tour or something, but to actually be a full-time member and not be able to contribute, I think it would hurt my heart slowly.
Yeah,
Like it would kind of eat away at me.
that's rough. I did a tour for Lionheart, just filling in for them, and then that was kind of the thing. It was just me, just I just filled in for them. But even just filling in for them, and it's nothing to do with them. Like I've been a fan for Lionheart for years beforehand, and Ghost had played a lot of shows with them. That's why they asked me to do it.
Mhm.
But even that, I was like, I'm just like playing a cover set, basically. You know what I mean? It's not
Yeah.
the same as going out there, and the shows were crazy. They were all packed. It was their first Europe headline tour, and they're like now that's when they were getting big in Europe. Now they're massive in Europe. It's
Mhm.
fucking insane. But most of the shows, they were all club shows, and they were like most of the tour was sold out. It was fucking crazy.
That's so
But
sick.
even now, it's like it's not the same. It's not the same as playing your own music and people going crazy to shit that you put your heart into. You know, there's no
Right.
feeling. There's almost no feeling like that. But
Yeah.
it was still an amazing experience and everything. But even just that was like you get to a point where like, yeah, this is cool, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
It just it like weighs on you a little bit. Like I was saying, it like makes your like your heart sad and stuff. Like
Mhm.
even that, like doing something super cool, but after having people go crazy to music you put yourself into, it's not the same at
Yeah.
all. I know you guys toured a ton, like Dark Sermon toured a ton, and a lot of the tours, like I was doing some research and everything beforehand, obviously, to because I knew Dark Sermon was, but I didn't really know like what exact tours you guys supported and stuff like that. So I was like, let me check out what tours they've done. You guys did a ton of super sick tours, so I want to know like what you learned from that and kind of what you brought into like prison per se after because touring is such a learning experience. Obviously, anyone who's touring know you can learn a ton from either from any like from yourself for life, being in a band, how to perform live and everything. So, what were your biggest takeaways from touring that hardcore and going and starting a new band after that?
A few things come to mind. The first of which is it's a very humbling experience to tour, no matter where you are in the lineup. So if you're an opener and you're playing and there's still a line wrapped around the door and there are kids outside and you have to play, it I can't explain what it does to your heart. Like, oh, if that guy would just stamp people's wristbands faster, these kids could be inside and we could play in front of people. But here I traveled 3,000 miles to play in front of the 17 kids who made it here in time to watch us.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of humility that comes from realizing that you are where you are in the pecking order. And listen, man, if it says you're off stage by 6:25, but the flyer or the Facebook event for the show says doors are at 7:30, you just have to play.
Yeah.
There is no, I'm going to call someone's manager and I'm going to make a big stink. It's like, bro, you're the first band. And while it's not fair, you just kind of have to suck it up. And it's one of my, it's a beef that I have with the music industry is that it's almost like if you're a lower ticket band, your input isn't as valid. And this is
Right.
kind of true everywhere. And it's just something that feels more visceral as a smaller band because you're traveling just as far as everybody else. You are playing, it's everyone makes the same commitment on a bill.
Right.
And just because it's like imagine traveling just as far, ordering just as much merch, paying having all the same overhead, only you're making a quarter as much as the band above you,
Right.
and that band gets to play later in front of more people, and you really have to get over yourself, which is a terrible feeling. And so that's something that I think I learned is like, listen, if it says we're off stage at 6:25, we better be wrapping up by like 6:23.
Right.
And you learn to just kind of know your role and respect the bands above you, because whether you like it or not, they're above you on the bill. They are your teammates for the next 2 months. So you really better do what you can to support them. So I think one thing that comes to mind is just the how humbling it is to
Right.
support bigger bands. And a lot of them won't know your name. A lot of them won't know anything about your band. A lot of them won't watch you for the whole tour. We've experienced a lot of that.
Right.
So you kind of have to develop a thicker skin. But at the same time, it taught me don't tour too much, because Dark Sermon broke up because every member got too tired.
I got
Some
burnt
people
out.
wanted to, like, I mean, we got signed when I had just started college. So none of us had even gotten a chance to be people yet. We couldn't have girlfriends, we couldn't have apartments.
Right.
Like, all of our friends were getting jobs and experiencing young adulthood. And we were in Wisconsin digging our van out of the snow that we just slept in. Like, it's,
Right.
I think part of the imbalance that I had in Dark Sermon is we all thought if we tour 8 months a year, we'll get big. And the truth is, you don't decide if you're big.
Right.
There are so many, you could be the greatest band in the world, but if someone's uncle doesn't decide that you deserve to be on the cover of a magazine, or if your agent loses a Mario Kart match with another agent for the opening slot on Summer Slaughter, which is something that literally happened. And that's how
That's
we lost a
insane.
Summer Slaughter opportunity. When you realize how fickle the industry is, you realize if I tour 4 months this year or 8 months, my opportunity to impact this culture is somewhat determined by me and somewhat determined by external factors. So you
Yeah.
learn, I'm gonna do my 4 months, I'm gonna do my 6 months or 2 months. I'm only gonna take tours that I feel are intelligent for us. And if we have to stay home for a while, we will. I think it taught us, don't try to cram 15 years of touring into 3 years thinking that
Right.
you'll grow any faster. It really is a matter of taking your time and doing what's best for the band long term. And Dark Sermon didn't do that at all.
Yeah, because you can even touring too much is definitely a thing, especially for a band that's building. Because the band could be like, oh, especially for tour opportunities, like, oh, hey, you could have gotten this tour offer, but like, hey, they just got off tour. It doesn't make sense to put them on another
Mm-hmm.
full US tour. They were just there. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And obviously there's radius clauses now,
Yeah.
especially with
If your manager decides that you don't need to follow them, which we've seen too, we've seen some people get out of, we actually saw this one band play the same exact venue 3 times in 3 weeks on 3 different tours.
that
They
is
did like a full
insane.
tour, and then they did part of a leg of another tour, and then they did another tour. And it was 3 times in 3 weeks at the same venue. And we were like, radius clause much? And we were on one of those tours with them, and they were like, yeah, I mean, our manager worked his way around it. I'm like, holy crap, we need like a buff manager who's just like, prison can do what I say they can do.
Yeah, and that's the thing that sucks too. It's like depending who your team is, you can get away with anything, which
Yeah.
sucks. And like obviously I've only been a small mid-tier booking agent, so it's like I've obviously never been in anywhere near to throw around that weight. I have been able to work around stuff, being
Mm-hmm.
like, oh hey, like with Last 10, they did the Fit for an Autopsy release tour. And
Well,
then
real quick, sorry to interrupt. I'm
yeah, okay.
listening to their new record right now. Like, when I
Oh,
paused it to do this interview, I was listening to them literally at this exact time. So shout out to Last 10.
hell yeah. That's awesome. I love those guys. They're the
But
best.
anyway, I just wanted to show them love. Go ahead.
Oh, of course. Dude, welcome to anytime. I love them as people. I love them as a band. I've
Mm-hmm.
known Wyatt for almost 10 years, and
Yeah.
that's why we work together now. Because obviously they've had issues with managers and agents, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe not issues, but it just didn't work out for them. So
Yeah.
now they wanted to go with someone they knew, and it worked out. But they did the Fit for Not Happy release tour, and then we got an offer for that Born of Osiris tour, which I think like 2 or 3 shows kind of overlapped. So I had to make some calls to make it work. And luckily, I'm friends with the agent who books for an autopsy. So I was like, hey, can we make this work, whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
that I got to work out. And obviously Born of Osiris' agent didn't really care. He's like, whatever, you guys are. No, sometimes they just don't care. They're like, hey, they're the support band. Like, it's cool. And they
Yeah.
weren't the exact same cities. It was kind of just like they were in the radius. So they
Yeah.
were like, yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it, which is cool. That's awesome when that happens. Obviously, there's times like what you're mentioning that should not happen. That's a little too much.
Yeah.
Three times in 3 weeks at the same venue. That's a little
Yeah.
much. I can see like twice, maybe in like the same month, maybe.
Yeah.
Because it's weird because I used to live in Syracuse, and when Stray from the Path was first like exploding, I seriously saw them, I swear, every month in Syracuse on supporting a different tour. Which is funny because every time I saw them, more people knew them, which was super cool to
Yeah.
see. Because it was like me and my friend, like, oh, we love Stray from the Path. This is fucking sick. But like no one knew them yet. It was like
Mhm.
right when Make Your Own History came out. So it was like the rise of Stray from the Path. So it was
Yeah.
funny to see like, like, oh, 5 people know the words. Oh, 20 people know the words. Oh shit, the whole venue
So
knows all
sick.
the words, which is crazy because I think like Tom from Stray tweeted something. He's like, we were here a month ago and no one knew who the fuck we were. So this is sick, or
Yeah.
something like that, which I was like, that's shit, like that's cool to see. But at the same time, you're like, how did they get away with that? Maybe it's because they were the opener. I don't know. That's the one thing I hate about something, or I guess my biggest gripe with the music industry is that the playing field is definitely not level for
No.
everyone, which I get it. Some people have been in this for decades at this point, and some people definitely have earned their spots at the top and
Mhm.
everything on the agent or the manager role. But it's a little disheartening when they don't let, and this isn't the case across the board, definitely not, but when they don't let the up and comers kind of come in, whether it be the band or the agent and the band kind of come in. It's like they pick who's cool, and if they're cool, they can come support this tour and shit like that. It's just like I feel like so many bands get so many opportunities wasted just because no one will take a look at them, which is a
Yeah.
bummer.
I think that one of the biggest concerns that I have with rock music in particular, because I listen to a lot of acoustic and folky type stuff. I listen to a
Okay.
ton of rap, and obviously I listen to a fair amount of rock. I think what rock is doing that is endangering the future of its own longevity of the genre is it kind of wants to maintain the legacy of the bands that have been big for 10, 20, 30 years at
Mm,
the expense of sort of nurturing the smaller bands. And at one point, what's going to happen is those big bands will fall off and they'll realize who's going to headline our festivals.
yep.
We haven't put the time and attention into the person we're going to hand the torch to.
Yep.
And when some vocalist passes away, or when some band breaks up, or when some band loses their allure with modern listeners, they're going to realize, oh no, we have 1,000 small bands that we have not invested in, and then like 36 mid-tier bands that can't headline a festival,
Yep.
and it's our fault. I'm concerned that the bands that actually have the potential to carry the torch are being squashed down because, look at rap. Um, every big name in rap right now nobody had heard of a couple years ago.
That's very
In
true.
my opinion, that is better for the longevity of the genre. I
I
think
agree.
rock likes to preserve the longevity of an artist.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, we're going to do a 30-year, 40-year tour for this band. And they're not concerned about whether the genre will still be around. But with rap,
Mm-hmm.
there's new blood. Oh, top 40. If I look at top 40, I'm like, who are any of these bands? But if I look at a festival, a rock festival, I'm like, I've literally
I've heard of
all
these bands
these
my
bands
whole life.
play every single festival. And it makes me sad because as someone who is biased from doing this for over a decade, I feel that so many people who I know so many people in my position who have been doing it forever, who have amazing music, who have sold literally probably $1 million in merch by now, to
Right.
like tons of listens and resonated with all of these people all over. And then they get shelved because a legacy band deserves the higher spot or whatever. And all I
Right.
think is if rock dies, it will be because we refused to invest in young talent for the sake of preserving the legacy bands that, in my opinion, are fairly close to retirement.
Oh yeah, I mean, and we have already seen band like Motley Crue did their last tour and shit like that. Like that, these bands retiring is already happening. A
Mm-hmm.
cool thing I have seen in the past couple of years, at least, is um, like Under Oath did that Alice in Chains tour and shit like that. Like bands like that are starting
Yeah.
to get like stadium tours, which are
I
cool.
think that's the only path forward. That and touring with other genres. Like I want
Yes.
Prison to tour with Lil Pump and Katy Perry. Like I want to. I think for the longevity of rock, we have to pair the core bands with the legacy bands so that those
Oh yeah.
listeners have somewhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have to make sure that we're also not leaving out. Look at a rap video. It's mosh pits, dude. I
Yeah, dude.
I
It started with like
need
Waka.
I need in my lifetime, in my career as a musician, I need to see rock and rap finally coincide. There's been a lot of little attempts here and there, and they try to get some off the ground. It doesn't work. It has to be an intentional joining of fan bases,
Mm-hmm.
and probably most Prison fans listen to rap. It would
Oh,
be an
probably.
easy swap, and I'm sure that's true for a lot of metal bands.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with that. And I always love mixed genre stuff. That stuff's always the most interesting
Mm-hmm.
because you're not going to a show and seeing not the same band, but a band they're all
Yeah.
very similar 5 times over. It's like if you can get some real variety in there, that's only going to help shit grow. And that's exactly what you said. And there's also a thing that's been hurting super bad, especially in the past couple of years, is there'll be a decent sized headliner, like a good club size headliner tour, and then the opener buys on for like $20,000 or some shit. Which for
Yes.
one, no one gives a fuck about that band because no one knows who the fuck they are. They have literally no notoriety, so no one's going. It's not like a band like Prison or like Chamber or whatever. Being
Mhm.
like, I know that band. At least if you haven't listened to them, like I've heard of them through
Yeah.
someone else. I'm gonna go check them out. I'm gonna go watch them because they're opening. But it's just this band who you've never heard of in your life, and there's no buzz online. People aren't gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna go check them out. They're like, nah, I'll show up late. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So it's like
And those bands, those buy-on bands break up, bro.
oh yeah,
You can't spend
they
20 grand and survive.
no, they do that tour and they're gone.
So instead of building up a band that has potential to grow, and I understand because we're getting into systemic problems because it's like
Yeah.
if that headliner was actually getting paid enough to make a living, then they wouldn't have to do buy-ons.
Nope.
So the problem goes from the opener, the local bands, all the way to headliners who are charting on Billboard, who are selling out tours, are getting jobs. They're getting
Yeah.
part-time jobs. We sold 12,000 records first week. This is amazing. And they'll do all of this. They'll succeed in every respect
Right.
and then not be able to support themselves. So it creates a system where they have to get a buy on just to cover their van or their bus.
Yeah, that's true.
It's ridiculous.
That is very true. It's most like a lot of things in this country where the system is very much flawed and it doesn't work.
Dude,
But
you know what I just realized? This was a couple days ago. I realized that if every single person who liked Prison's Facebook page gave us $5 once a year, we could all take salary.
and that's like a CD or something.
Less.
Yeah.
If you gave us $5 one time every year, just the people who like our Facebook, not on Spotify, not on Instagram, like all
Right.
the other places that we've seen people. And think about it. If you did that, we wouldn't have to charge for merch. We wouldn't have to charge for CDs. Wouldn't have to charge for concerts because we would be earning a living making music. We would put out so much more music. We'd put out literally free merch or at cost merch.
Which is
But
crazy.
but people will think I'd rather buy one Starbucks coffee one time
Right.
than provide an entire year's salary for the members of my favorite band.
That's crazy.
Right?
Yeah, it's like actually insane.
And what I think what makes me so sad is everyone knows the music industry is broken, but
Yeah.
then we all participate. Like we'll get a tour offer and then our guarantee gets cut. And then we're swapped down a slot on the lineup. And then
Mhm.
I'm like, well, we have to take it because we booked our whole fall around this.
Right.
And it's too late now. And we allow ourselves to be bullied. And I think a lot of bands do, because
Yeah.
what makes music different from every other from a lot of other industries is if you're an accountant and you spend 10 years doing professional accounting and then you apply for a job and they say, um, listen, I know you said you wanted $100,000 a year. We're actually going to pay you $20,000 a year. You're going to need to work 80, 90, 100 hours a week. We will not respect you. You're going to be totally disposable and we can fire you at any time. And you'd say, F you, I've been doing
Yeah.
this for 10 years. I know my worth. I'm leaving. But the music industry can do that because they say, oh, you don't want to take a fifth of what you wanted? Well, there's the door, because there's 1,000 kids behind you who want this exact opportunity, who
Yep.
will starve, who will lose their apartment, who will break up with their girlfriend, who will cut off ties with their family in order for us to take advantage of them. And it's such a toxic, manipulative atmosphere. And yet, even knowing that, I still have to participate in it to make
Yeah.
music.
No, yeah, you're completely right. Like even if I looked at professional, like someone hit me up for a design and I'm like, here's the price. And they're like, yeah, I can't do it. I can easily go, well, that's what it is. Sorry. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, if it was in the other foot, if it was something with like, oh, hey, can I get this band on a tour? Hey, I'll throw in my work for free. And they're like, okay, yeah, we'll do it if you do that. And it's like, you know, it's like I'm literally devaluing myself to get a band on a tour, which I've done before because I want to
Yeah.
help out the band and I want to grow the band. But it's like it's the same exact thing, you know, like if it was the other situation, I would be like, no. If it was someone I knew and they're like, hey, I can only do this, I'm like, of course I'm not gonna,
Mm-hmm.
it's someone I know and have a relationship with, I'm not gonna be like, no, that's the price, take it. I'll be like, hey, what can you do? I'll work with you. Especially in times like this, like everyone's fucking hurting for everything. So
Yeah.
I'd be like, this is all I can do. I'm like, okay, I'll make it work, you know. But if it was someone new who I don't really have a rapport with, like, you know, even if you got referred by someone I don't really know who you are, and the person didn't really know them that well either, I'd be like, this is what it is. If you don't like it, like, sorry, like, this is how I pay my bills. So it's like, I understand if you can't, but like, is what it is. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I guess I've never really thought about. I have thought about that way, but not fully in that much of depth, I guess. But you're completely right.
Dude,
I'm sure most people will agree.
I've ruined my life in a lot of respects for music. And then I talk to people in the industry who say, well, you really haven't ruined it enough. You don't want it enough. You haven't grinded enough. And
uh,
to me, the music industry is so toxic that every time that I've considered quitting music, which is many,
mm,
it's all been around the culture of the industry, never the culture of a concert. Like being with kids and having people
yeah,
jump around and push each other and hug and line up at the merch table. And there's so much connection there. And I think that we're going over time here, but I genuinely think that this time next year, a quarter of the bands we love will be broken up.
yeah,
A quarter of the venues that we love will be shut down. A quarter of the booking agencies and all this stuff, there will be casualties. And I think the casualties on the artist front will be felt because if you give someone a chance to make 12 bucks an hour and live with their girlfriend and shower every day, all of a sudden they're like, I'm not getting back in a van, because they've been away from the only part of music that's rewarding, which is spending time with
yeah,
fans. So if you give people enough time away, they start to focus on, wow, the music industry is really corrupt. And my agent talks down to me all the time. And our manager is really sketchy and has actually taken more money than we owed him. And you really start to get a picture
mm,
of the industry. I know a lot of musicians who their bands haven't officially broken up, but behind closed doors, they all decided they were going to quit, because if you spend long enough away from the only intoxicating, alluring part of being a musician, you
right.
start to realize all the flaws and how unhealthy it is. So Prison is trying to do everything we can to stay creative, because the only thing that feels even remotely as good as spending time with kids at shows is
Creative
making
music.
music. And if we stop that, there's no reason to stay in the game.
Yeah, that I completely agree with that. I mean, it's happened definitely for me in a sense from the booking side, because I'm like, I busted my ass for years and it's gotten me to a point, but it's like, should I be at a further point? Should I not be? You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's all in your head playing with this stuff and everything. And it's like, well, I have helped grow these bands. And then there's certain bands where they're like, yeah, I don't want to work with you because we're the reason we got these opportunities, not you. So we're just gonna do it ourselves. And like that sucks to hear, because it's like,
Yeah.
you helped them with those opportunities, but bands are always going to see it from a different perspective. There's always two sides to the coin. Always. There's always two perspectives. But being away from it, I'm like, wow, I mean, like that took a toll on me. Like being an agent takes a toll
Mm-hmm.
on you mentally, for sure. Because it's like they're, very, I mean, there's bands that appreciate me for definitely, for sure. But there's other bands that are like, well, how come we're not doing the same as your band on your roster? And, how come we're not getting these opportunities? And it's like, I was like, I can only do so much. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not a perfect laid out formula and everything like that. So from both sides, there's definitely obviously different circumstances, but I've definitely felt like exactly what you're saying. Like, wow, I've been away for this for 6 months, because especially now, there's no point of planning tours. We have no idea
Yeah.
when shows are going to go back. We have no idea. Like some bands have asked me, and I'm like, I don't have an answer for you.
Yeah.
Like you can see like someone was like, oh, I see tours getting rescheduled. I'm like, well, good for them, but it's probably going to get canceled. Like, I'm not
Yep.
being mean, just being real with you. It's
Yeah.
probably not going to happen. And I don't want to put any work into it until, especially now that tours have been rescheduled, because I had bands on support tours that got rescheduled and got rescheduled again. And now they're at a point where like, yeah, it's probably going to get canceled because we don't know
Right.
when these are going to happen, because every state regulation is different. So it's like you're not going to do a full US tour when you don't know what states you can hit. And
Mm-hmm.
all these bands doing tickets, they're not going to want to do limited capacity shows, or like what heavy band wants to do a socially distant show? Like that takes
Yeah.
away everything that you love about shows.
Yeah.
Like you're going to take away the energy out of a show. Like watch a YouTube video. Like I can see like live streams, that makes sense, because it's like you're seeing it, but it's better to be sitting at your house watching it than like sitting in a venue just sitting there watching a band. Like that's so weird to me.
I
Like
miss
how,
shows.
like, I can't imagine going to a show and just seeing people like sit there, like a heavy show. Like it
Mm-hmm.
makes sense for all these big bands doing these outdoor socially distant show, because it's like that's fine. Those are the type of bands you go to see. Like if I went to see John Mayer at a socially distant show, like I'd probably like it better because I wouldn't be around a bunch of weirdos
Yeah.
that like, cool, I'm watching John Mayer like uninterrupted with my closest friends next to me. Sounds pretty
Mm-hmm.
sick. Like even like Slipknot. Like if I saw Slipknot, like big bands, it makes sense. Like you're already seeing them in an outdoor setting. Like it kind of makes it better that like
Yeah.
you aren't like bothered with people, like. But if you're going to see like a Prison or like a Lorna Shore or any band, like Fit for an Autopsy, like you want to see that like sitting in little groups of 4 around a venue, like that sounds
Yeah.
terrible. But we'll see when shit gets back. Like you said, there's going to be bands broken up, agencies broken up, venues not there. Even when touring does
Yeah.
get back together, it's going to be a whole shift of what the fuck is even open, because like the Vaudeville Muse in Des Moines closed.
Mm-hmm.
Like the only venue in Omaha for like smaller tours closed. It's like that's a big section from the Midwest to Colorado. I guess
Yep.
there's just gonna be drive days there now, unless you play
Yeah.
Kansas City or like Wichita or something. But even
I
those
think
can be like hits or miss too. So it's like all of these venues are going away. So it's like we're gonna have to figure out how to even make tours happen when they come back, even when
yeah,
they do.
we're probably gonna sell our van and trailer because we were like trying to keep it for a
Right.
while, and then now like we're still paying insurance on it. We have to pay to store it, and it's just like we're just losing hundreds of dollars every month for something
Sure.
that we can't use. And then you just got to think of if we don't know when we're touring again, we can't keep saying, well, let's save this for tour, and well, let's
Yeah.
plan to do like an in-ear rig. What are we going to do with it? It's a money pit, and we could better
Yeah.
spend that somewhere else. And we're right now, it's a matter of survival, and we're just switching to
Mhm.
focusing on music. We are writing a ton of music. We plan
Good.
on doing a lot of single releases to just try to create something and provide value for people that we can't see in person.
Mhm.
And hopefully that will get us to the next stage of concerts, whatever that is. But if anyone is listening to this and they're like, I'm in a band and what the heck do we do in between? You have to be creative. Make
Yep.
something. Please make something, a merch design, a song, an intro, mash some samples together to make your own unique, do something, because
Yeah.
you, just like I broke my elbow once and I couldn't bend my arm for about 2 months. I had it in a cast, and your muscles atrophy. And I think the same
Yeah.
thing happens with creativity. So just don't allow yourself to go 5, 8, 12 months without creating something just because you're waiting for shows to come back. Like, we're
Mhm.
all waiting for shows to come back, but in the meantime, please do something to exercise that muscle so it doesn't get damaged.
Yeah, that's what I've told any of my bands. They're like, "What should we do?" And I was like, "The only thing you can do is create content, whether it be put out new music, do some music videos with the music, do some playthrough videos, do interviews, do podcasts, like do whatever you can to just not
Mm-hmm.
do nothing." I was like, is you can't hope on like, hey, let's book this tour, even if it's just us. Like, you can't do that right now. You got to wait that
Mm-hmm.
out and see it. So a lot of my bands like went in the studio, recorded new music, and I was like, that's perfect. That's the only thing we can do right now is just
Yep.
release music, release content, and just show people you're there. Like Kingsman from they're on Sharp Tone, and they've just been doing live streams like almost like once a month. Some of them have been
Mm-hmm.
like Q&A, some have been like a few songs and a Q&A and stuff like that. And like
Yeah.
stuff like that is so important and vital. And it's like I don't understand why so many bands haven't done. I mean, some bands might not have the means to, which that makes sense. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure most bands can have a friend who can set up a rig and or hit up your local venue and be like, hey, can we team up and do a live stream show just so we can do something?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like Fit for a Kings went off super well, like Code Orange went off super well. I mean, those are different. Those are bands with insane followings at this point. But
Yeah.
just do something. Like exactly like you said, just don't do nothing.
Yeah.
That's the biggest part to keep things going, because we cannot bank on shows, at least for a while. Because there's even people like Brendan from Counterparts was on Chuck's podcast, and he's like, I don't even know if there's going to be touring next year, which is a
Yep.
very big possibility that it might not happen. Maybe not until the
Yeah.
end of the year, but everything's so up in the air. Like we don't have answers.
Yeah.
So we talked about why Dark Sermon called it quits. Have you told the story about how Prison kind of got together?
It was just, so it was while Dark Sermon was still together. Cooper and I just started writing like a stupid, dumb, heavy project just for fun.
Yeah.
And we weren't allowed to put our names on it because we were signed to labels and we weren't supposed to start side projects or anything. So we just like
Oh,
wrote some
wow.
fun internet stuff. And then we're like, let's just put it out on Bandcamp and see how it does. And then it was like enough people shared it with each other that it was starting to do like as well or better than our real bands. And it was like just people showing people. And um we had I don't even know that we had a Facebook at the time. We just like put out some songs, no member info anywhere. And we never intended to do it full time because we were in full-time bands. And then our full-time bands broke up around the same time. And I looked at Cooper like, well, I'm not done with music. Just because everyone in my band is done with music doesn't mean that I don't want to make music anymore.
Right.
And I could either try to find, like pull in a mirror and be the only member from before and try to
Right.
rope in a bunch of new people, which works for some bands. I don't think it would have worked in my case. So I wanted to still do music. I just couldn't do it with Dark Sermon. And he was in a similar position where his band was breaking up. And actually Truck, our drummer, was in Cooper's old band Adalia, who
Yep.
was signed to Media Scare actually. So it was just like the perfect timing of the worst year of our lives, where like our purpose for being alive was collapsing.
Right.
And we kind of looked at each other, and we'd known each other for a decade, and we're like, well, we have something that we started. Do you want to just try to write a couple more songs and see if people like those? And then eventually um it we made the decision together that we wanted to actually try it for real. And that was scary because we were nervous that it wouldn't, you know, you have a 1 in a million chance of getting signed or
Right.
getting tours or getting an agent or anything. It's so hard to get anything done nowadays because there's so
Mhm.
many bands and people don't really throw bones like they used to. So now we were scared that if we started a new band that it would be smaller and we'd have to start back from the local, playing local shows for a couple years. And we're like, yo, either we are coming out the gate doing a legit tour or we are not doing shows, because my heart can't take another 2-3 years of
Of
being treated
grinding.
like dirt.
Yeah.
Like, we have to at least have a presence out the gate. So I consider myself very fortunate that we didn't have to start from square one.
Scratch. Because that first tour was that Suicide Silence tour, right?
Yeah. And a lot of people um thought we bought on to that tour.
Oh, I know you didn't buy
And
them.
honestly, looking back, it was such a great tour that I can see how people would be like, how did they get that? But really it was, you got to think we had been in the music industry for 8 years or
Mhm.
more at that point and had met a lot of people, had
Yeah.
shared our music with a lot of people, had forged connections over almost a decade. So fortunately, it was just the right person saw the right music video, shared it with the right person. And that was our first tour. And I think without that, I don't know that Prison would have actually tried full force to be a band if we would have had to start without doing real tours.
That makes sense. I mean, that's a reason why I never really got back into playing in bands. I played a few shows with The World We Knew, Frank Finelli's
Mhm.
band, but that was like he's like, hey, I tour not now, but he's like I tour like almost all year, either TMing, doing merch, or whatever. Frank and I have known each other for a while now, and he's like, hey, do you want to play in The World We Knew? He's like, we're not going to play many shows. The ones we do are going to be cool shows, and we might do like a small run here and there if it's like something really cool. But and I was like, yeah, that's the kind of commitment I would want, because after Ghost Ship ended, I did some stuff with Lionheart, but it was just filling in. It wasn't like I'm in the band or anything.
Yeah.
So that was just like easy. I was like, yeah, I'll do that. That's fine. But after that, I was like, I don't want to be in it, because so many people were like, oh, let's jam, or like, don't you want to be in another band? And I'm like, no, like I don't want to play local shows or go
Yeah.
tour, in a van and play to no one for 2 weeks. Like I did that. Like I'm good. Like I did a lot of
Yeah.
shit I
People
never
don't
thought I
know
was
what
gonna
that does
do.
to your heart.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was like, I did that, and now I've kind of come to the point where I'm like, maybe I'll write some new music, because I haven't really wrote music in 6 years or something. It's crazy. I didn't After the Lionheart stuff, I sold all my gear. And I didn't pick up an instrument until Frank was like, hey, do you want to do this? And I started learning those songs.
Hmm.
So it was a good like 4 or 5 years when I even touched an instrument at all. I had no like desire. And plus I was doing like the agent stuff. So it was like I was filling a different kind of void for music. I was like helping bands do stuff they always wanted to do. Like if I went to a fest, I got a band on, and seeing them play in front of hundreds or like close to like thousands of people, like it was so gratifying to me. I was like, this is awesome. Like seeing their like reaction to Kids to Them, and then getting done with the set and being like, that was incredible. Like I've always wanted to do something like this. Like that filled that void for me that playing live music did. So I could totally understand how you wanted to be like, we want to start off doing shit right, or why are we going to put up ourselves through that again? Because obviously,
Yeah.
like Adalia is like almost like famous for having one of the most like tough draws in the music industry, like for like the genre of music that we listen to, like ever. Like they're like
Yeah.
the band. Everyone's like, that band should have been massive. They're
Yeah.
like, that's them. Everyone talks about it. You know what I mean? And they did some cool shit, but they should have done cooler shit. You know?
Yeah. I definitely, looking back, I think that the general momentum of both of our bands was like Dark Sermon was on track to do like the whole behemoth thing,
Yeah.
and Adalia was on track to do the whole like Ghost Inside
Yeah.
kind of thing in terms of scale. Like we had done a lot of touring. We're super tight live. Kids seemed to like us, sold plenty of merch, like, and then thing after thing after thing prevented us from achieving our full potential. And I
Yeah.
think that's why we connected so much on Prison, because we looked at each other and we're like, listen, our experiences in this genre have been, you put blood, sweat, and tears, you sacrifice more than anyone will ever know for to basically get sidelined. So
Right.
either Prison is going to be the biggest band in the universe or we're not doing it, because
Right.
we've already lost a decade of our lives that we can't get back for an industry that didn't give us anything. So
Yep.
we need to take this into our own hands. And it's given us an attitude with Prison where no, we haven't signed. We briefly worked with a manager and it didn't work out. Other than that, we've had no manager. We worked with an agent for a term. And outside of that, we've done everything ourselves.
Yep.
And I think the attitude is this band needs to either be the biggest band in the world, like I said, and or the most fun band in the world, or we need to focus our time on other things, because
Right.
we had already been so drained and scorned by the music industry that
Yeah.
this has to be worth it or else we won't do it. And very fortunately, Prison has been super worth it.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. I mean, you guys have done super cool stuff already, so it it's good to hear that. And also, when I was doing research on Dark Sermon stuff, I noticed that we played a fest together in Florida. We played Southeast Beast Fest, and I didn't even realize
Oh,
this.
dang. Wow.
Yeah.
2014, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember, so that tour was super weird for us because we went to Florida, from upstate New York to Florida in 5 days. We did like 4 shows. It was just like, it was pretty much like drive, play show, drive, play show, drive, play show.
Mm-hmm.
And we got hooked up with a really good spot. We played like before Gideon on like the main stage or something. So
Heck
it was really a really good spot. It was the only time we ever played Florida. And it was an amazing show and everything like that. So it was very cool to play it for sure. And also we had 3 fill-ins. It was only me and the singer who were from the band,
Holy crap.
because the rest of usually when we toured, we probably had 2 fill-ins because the rest of the band just couldn't take off work or whatever. But this one, we had a drummer, guitar player, and bass player fill-ins. Nuts.
All I
for
remember
4
from
shows.
all I remember from that show is seeing Super Heaven for the first time and falling in love,
Yes.
and seeing Fireworks for maybe the 4th or 5th time,
Yep.
and realizing that they are one of the most fun bands to watch live, because
Yes.
each member is so genuinely content and happy and joyful on stage. And those are the 2 performances that really stick out to me: Fireworks and Super Heaven.
I loved Fireworks, and I was lucky enough they
I
played
think it
upstate New
was
York
that
a
fest.
ton of times. That would make sense because it was a super mixed bill. Like the day we
Mhm.
both played, it was Newfound Glory headlining on that like anniversary tour. But
So
like
sick.
there was so many tours that combined, like the Ghost Inside, A Case Just Strained Gideon tour, In Heart's Wake was there, the Defeater Counterparts Capsize tour was there, and then there was like A Loss for Words and Citizen. It was like,
Didn't King 9 play and Trapped Under Ice?
probably yes, because I know remember the day after was like Let Live and like Earth Crisis, and we didn't see the next day. We had to drive back to New York.
Yeah, that was
But
on a tour for us, I believe.
that's awesome. Yeah, it was fucking crazy. It was like literally every tour happening at that time all played that
sick.
fest. It was insane. Because if you go look at that flyer, like I was even like re-looking at the flyer, like looking at all the bands that played, and I was like, this is insane. There's
Yeah.
so many fucking bands that played that you never would think played fest together. And they were just like, yep, whatever. You're all playing.
Dude, I even think My Ticket Home might have played that.
They probably did. Like literally everyone in that like scene, whether it was like
So awesome.
pop punk through like deathcore, played it. It was
Yeah.
crazy. Like any band you could think of, they were on it. It was nuts.
Dude, is this podcast edited?
I can edit it if you need me to.
Okay, I just need to take a bathroom break.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Do you have an idea of how much longer this will run? Ballpark?
I had like one question left, so
Okay.
not much
I'm
longer.
sorry. I can't wait anymore. Give me a minute. You can keep this in the show if you want. I don't mind. I just have to pee so bad.
All right, after John's little bathroom break, we're back. So last thing I
4
wanted
hours
to,
later.
yeah, 7 years later. So the last thing I wanted to touch on was Cope Notes. Obviously, you've done a lot of cool stuff with Cope Notes, the CNN stuff, the TED Talk stuff. So what made you want to start it? And also after that, I want to, obviously a lot of people, especially in our space, who are more open with mental health and everything, if you can give them some advice maybe to help them with everything that's going on after you say at the start, obviously your insight would be much appreciated for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think Cope Notes was, I tell one side of the story when I do traditional press, and I get to tell the other side when I'm talking to like people in the scene.
Yeah.
But really, it was heavily influenced by music. I would talk to kids at shows, and after the show, they'd be like, this is the only thing that I have to look forward to for like the next, for the rest of the year. This was
Right.
really my only thing, was like looking forward to seeing you guys. And I would think to myself, like, that's amazing, but oh no, like
Yeah.
I'm leaving tonight. I'm leaving, before you even get to your house tonight. I'm packing up, getting ready to go to the next city. And kids would ask me at shows like, I know you've gotten over certain diagnoses and you've gotten healthier. What helped you? And I would tell them, definitely therapy helped me a lot. Taking medication helped me a lot. Praying helped me a lot. Actually finding faith and trying to educate myself about the concept of God and if I really believed. And sleeping regularly, reading books about psychology and my diagnoses. And people were like, no. I don't like any of that. I don't want to do any of that stuff. And I realized that people wanted to feel better, but there was a resistance to all of the traditional measures that come along with recovery. And I wanted to make something that could help those people who didn't feel safe walking into a church, who didn't trust therapists and mental health professionals, who had a weird feeling about going to the doctor, or who didn't like group like support groups and stuff like that. I was like, how do I make something that helps those people, but also can be there on the days when they don't have a show that night, on days, when maybe there's nothing exciting happening for the next 3 months in their life and they don't have something to look forward to. How can they have a little something to get them through each day? So the inspiration was seeing a huge need for daily mental health support and realizing that the only options were either too expensive, they were too personal, like collected way too much personal data, or they were really inconvenient to use. And I wanted to make something that addressed all of those things.
That's awesome. That's super cool, because obviously it's hard if you don't have health insurance, which a lot of people don't. It's hard to go to a therapist and not be insanely expensive. And a lot of people don't want to go to stuff like that, or like you said, it's too uncomfortable for them to go to a church, or to find some other means to make it better. So that's awesome. That's very commendable. There's been a few people in the scene who have done stuff like that, and I always think it's really cool, because obviously that kind of stuff can be detrimental on your own mental health in a way, because you kind of almost like take on other people's thoughts and everything. So it's like it's like hard for someone to do that, be like, hey, yes, I will help you, but it's like you start that thing because you had issues like that as well. So it's like now you have your own issues that you've gotten better at, or mostly gotten rid of, but then now you're kind of taking on other people's too, which is can be very taxing, obviously.
Yeah. I heard this sermon recently by this preacher, Tim Keller, who I love. And he said something along the lines of, you can't help somebody without taking on some of their burden, without
Mm,
inconveniencing yourself to some extent. There is no
right.
version of actually assisting somebody and showing compassion that doesn't take a toll on you somehow. Your time, your energy, your finances, your availability, whatever it is, the only way to help somebody is to assume some of that burden. And
Right.
it's been a real challenge for me to run Cope Notes and run Prison, both of which are largely thankless, fruitless. I'm not getting paid. I'm not getting paid to do this. I'm a full-time volunteer. For
Right.
for my entire life, I've been working 80 hours a week since high school and not being compensated. And it's challenging to wake up the next day and continue to care for people. And I think the balance that I've had to strike is like, am I in the right headspace to help somebody right now? Or do I need to go on a bike ride? Or do I need to listen to some
Mm,
music and calm down so I can pick this back up and not do more damage
right.
than help? So I think actually we just wrote a song that hopefully we'll release soon. It's actually my favorite song we've ever written, and it's
Awesome.
about compassion fatigue, about
Oh,
trying to help people and then realizing that you need help, you know?
wow. That's awesome. I like that a lot. I'm excited to hear it too. I hope it does come out soon. So do you have any advice for people other than for what everyone is going through right now? Obviously, being home and being secluded is not not ideal for anyone.
Yeah.
So, if there's any advice you have for anyone who's looking for something, like obviously, like I mean, I live with my wife and one of our best friends, so I have human interaction
Mhm.
still. And I've been doing this podcast, which has allowed me to like meet new people or reconnect with old friends and stuff like that, which has been very beneficial for me to have interaction with people. Even if it is virtual, it's still you're having a conversation with another human being. But if you have any advice for someone like looking for something to help them through all of this, I am obviously in a lucky position to be able to have an outlet or have other people to lean on to, but not
Mhm.
everyone has that. So if you have any advice for that, that would be very cool.
Yeah, I actually want to switch it up and give advice to the people who are not looking for that.
Oh, okay.
Um, I see a lot of like tough guy mentality in the scene, and a big reason why I paint my nails on tour and dye my hair pink and wear flowery leggings on stage is because I'm trying to combat the whole image of having to wear the Doc Martens and the vest and be all tough and have long hair and be brutal. Like I I feel for people right now who have to be strong for somebody,
Mm,
who have people depending on them, or if they're depending on their own strength. I want to encourage you, if you're listening to this and you are not looking for new ways to cope, if you are not looking for ways to support yourself and other people during this, to look for those things. I think no matter who you are, how strong you are, what your life was like before this versus now, you have to change something. The entire world has changed, and you
yeah.
can't be the only cog that decides that you will be unaffected by this, because that will hurt you and it will hurt the people that you love, the people that are depending on you. So I'm positive that there are people listening to this right now who think, oh, everyone else is just, they're not adapting. I adapted. Dude, realize that you are a person. You are a human with a brain and a heart. I spent the last 4 years out of therapy. I've been out of clinical treatment, and I started therapy again this year. If you have not been through traditional treatment, if you are not in mental health recovery, you have no idea what it feels like to spend 4 years out of it and then have to go back. It
Right.
kills you. You feel like you are regressing, like you lost all of this ground that you gained. And still, I work in the mental health field and I'm doing this. Everybody, my therapist is seeing a therapist. You are not exempt. I don't care how many tattoos you have or how big your truck is or how heavy of music you listen to. You have to do something differently. Please take care of yourself. Please research stuff and stop excluding yourself from being human, because it does a lot more damage than it does good.
Yeah, all the times when there was this book I read called Make Time, and it made such a difference to me viewing like how a day is planned out or anything like that. And the biggest thing I took away from it, it's like, hey, if you don't work out today, hey, if you don't get everything you had on your list done today, like just brush it off. There's tomorrow. Like
Mm-hmm.
don't uh the biggest thing with me, and I'm still like working on it anyway, is I let too many things like bother me, or if
Mm-hmm.
things are incomplete, it like drives me crazy. So the biggest thing for me has been like letting go of any things that are like mostly out of my control. Like stuff comes up in the day and you can't just get everything done, and it's fine because it really at the end of the day it's not going anywhere. It's gonna
Mm-hmm.
be there tomorrow. It's gonna be there the next day if you don't get to it tomorrow. So that's been the biggest thing, is like if you don't get what you had your mindset on, just let it go. It'll still
Yeah,
be
buddy.
there. And like you said, we're all human. You know, it's like sometimes like Sam will sleep in or something, and she's like, "Oh, I feel like I wasted the day. I slept in until 9 or 10 or something." I'm like, "It's fine. You're a human being. You need
Mm-hmm.
to sleep. It's fine. Like you're fine. You're up now. Just you know." And I do the same thing. Like it's like, "Oh, I wanted to wake up at 6:30 today. I woke up at 8. Well, that's all right. I'll wake up at
Mm-hmm.
6:30 tomorrow." It's like it's fine. Again, stuff's not going anywhere. But yeah, thank you so much for that advice, and thank you so much for taking time out of your day to have this conversation with me. I'm like I said, we've been talking about this for a while now, so I'm glad it finally got to happen.
Heck yeah. Thanks for having me, dude.
Yeah, anytime. Is there anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
Obviously Cope Notes. Go to copenotes.com and we have a podcast. We have t-shirts, I'm pretty sure. We have obviously the subscription that you should check out. And then also we have gift subscriptions for friends and family members. So
Awesome.
I encourage you to check that out. And then also Prison has a new song dropping October 13th, which is literally a week from the day that we are recording this. So please go check it out. The song is called I Don't Want to Be Afraid Anymore. And it is about how watching TV and consuming media during the pandemic can make you paranoid and afraid, and how your TV really it's not your best friend. It doesn't have your best interest at heart, and you should really be connecting with people instead of technology.
That's awesome. Again, thank you for being on this, and everyone check out Cope Notes in Prison.
Yeah, buddy.
That's it for this one, guys. Thanks for checking this one out. I've been super excited to have the podcast back, coming back weekly, getting to interview new people. Feels really good. And if you want to support the podcast, go to Apple Podcasts, hit subscribe, review, 5 stars. Again, that helps so much. If you don't use Apple Podcasts, we're on Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. I put the audio versions on YouTube. We're on Spotify. So wherever you check out podcasts, we're there. And also leftovers for merch are online now, metalcorenerds.com, very limited sizes. And if you add a pin, if you buy a t-shirt, you get $5 off. So metalcorenerds.com, limited sizes of shirts, and there's still some pins left. Go pick them up. I'm not reprinting them. When they're gone, they're gone. Until next time, this is Metalcore Nerds.